Today I'm going to go over the do's and don'ts of writing your book blurb. So you've spent a bunch of money or immorally bribed a close friend into making the perfect cover art for your book. People are intrigued and now they're tempted to pick it up. And what's the first thing people do when they pick up a book? They flip it over. Once you've hooked a reader with an awesome book cover, you're already halfway to making the sale. Once they flip over your book, you've got T-minus 2 minutes to knock their socks off, or they're going to abandon that beautiful book of yours with all the other book rejects. Since I just recently jumped into writing my own book blurb, I wanted to share with all of you guys exactly what I've learned. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Do research your genre. I'm super weird because I thought this part was so exciting. I think it's important to be mindful while I'm reading a book so that I can learn as a writer what works and what doesn't. The same thing should be applied to blurbs. How many back covers have you read in your life? Probably a lot. But how many have you read and considered as a writer instead of as a reader? Probably not a lot. In business, you always want to be on top of what's trending. To do that, you need to incorporate a little research into your routine. Since you might not be writing in the same genre as I am, I'm going to highlight exactly what I did so that you can apply it to your own genre. So before I set out at all with writing my book blurb, I took to Amazon. I only looked at books in my target category and I only looked at successful books. Whether they were 10 days old or 10 years old, if they made a big splash, I took them into consideration. I then made a huge Excel spreadsheet of the book title and then its book blurb. I read through each one of them and then I deleted the ones that I didn't like. But I kept the ones that I felt meh about. Why would I do that? Because in the next column, I wrote down either what I loved about them or what I didn't want to accidentally do in my own blurb. After spending a few hours looking at what was out there for my own genre, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted. So if you have no idea what you want to write for your blurb, then break out your inner Hermione and get to doing some research. Next up, do highlight the conflict. As I said before, your back cover is a sales pitch for your novel. Your blurb should entice the reader and serve as a mini sneak peek into the action of your book. Incorporating the interesting parts of your story ensures that the reader knows what they're getting into. Not only that, but you want the reader interested in finding out the solution to this big problem. While highlighting the main conflict in your novel, do not give away any big reveals. Like the low point that your character experiences, you want your readers to feel like there's no obvious solution to your character's problems. If the reader takes one look at your blurb and feels that there's an easy solution to the problem, then you haven't done your job well. More than likely, they would put your book down because there's nothing that's making them stay. Some great ways to build intrigue is by asking some questions or using hyperboles in your blurb. Can she stop the Alabaster King in time to save her family? I don't know where that accent came from. The consequences of not succeeding are unthinkable. Anyway, do be mindful of format. This is something you can learn from your research phase. The ideal word count. Some genres could generally have longer blurbs than others, so it's important to stick with what you're writing in. For my own research, I found that YA fantasy novels tended to have about 170 words in their blurb. While I'm not shooting for exactly 170 words, I'm making this my absolute limit. You should also be concerned with how your genre's blurbs are typically structured. For example, most fantasy blurbs tend to introduce the world before they introduce the character. This is because the world that your character is in plays a huge role in how the story progresses. Romance novels, on the other hand, tend to bring in the character first, as the world building isn't at the forefront of the story. Here's the crazy statement: paragraph breaks are your friends. Get to know them well. You don't want to scare your reader away with one gigantic paragraph of information. Break it up, space it out, and make it look easy to read. If your blurb looks dense, then your target audience better love dense reading. Take it from me though, a large portion of fiction readers don't. So pay attention during your research phase so you know exactly what the proper formatting for your genre looks like. Don't use any cliches. This is something you should generally avoid in the entirety of your novel, but particularly in your blurb. You want to limit the number of eye rolls you receive when someone reads your back cover to 0. I'll be the first to admit that I use cliches in my everyday speech because they're just so darn convenient. But when you're writing, you have plenty of time to come up with a better way to say something than employing an overused phrase. Your word choice for your blurb should always match the tone of your novel, and cliches are generally wasted words. Yes, I still use some cliches, but I get rid of the big offenders. Generally speaking, you want your novel to stand out to the readers, and cliches are kind of a way of blending in with everybody else. If you find yourself tempted to use the cliche in your blurb, then write it down for now and then edit it out when you come up with the better words later. You want to come across as clever, not cliched. So refrain from the overused cliches before you scare away your readers. Don't mention other novels. There's probably going to be some disagreement on this topic, but drawing similarities between your novel and a well-known novel isn't your job. When you're querying agents or publishers, it might be a good idea to cut to the chase and make comparisons, but it does not belong in your blurb. We've already established that you have a very very limited number of characters, so don't waste them by discrediting yourself. More often than not, these things go on the front of the cover or in the online description. Vivien, you're an idiot. I see comparisons on books all the time. Yeah, and it's typically quoted by someone else. If you say your novel is a cross between The Hunger Games and The Maze Runner and it's not, guess what? You just made yourself seem untrustworthy. And then the reader might think that you're just trying to piggyback on somebody else's success just to get someone to pick up your book. And then they tell all their friends about it, and then you see where I'm going with this. If a person who's already established their own credibility says that about your novel, then it's not your fault if the reader doesn't agree. Because you know what? You can't please everybody. Just make sure that their claim is indeed true, or you could have some hate mail coming your way. Word of mouth is an amazing thing, but not if somebody thinks that you're an idiot. Remember, a blurb is ultimately a sales pitch to get someone to buy your novel. If your blurb doesn't make your book sound awesome and amazing and fantastic, then get to revising. Alright, so that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I post new writing videos every Wednesday. And if you guys ever have any questions or suggestions for my new videos, be sure to tweet me at Vivien Reis. Bye guys. Here a cameo. Oh, she's sniffing my hair. You little freak. She does not look like she's pleased.